the manager of sheep genetics. We put you on mute and turn your video off on entry. For best quality, please keep your video off. To help us keep the time, please keep your microphone muted. Ask any questions in the chat box, which is at the bottom of your screen. Select 2 Gus rows in the chat box. I will go through your questions at the end of the webinar. We will record the webinar and it will be available on the Sheep Genetics website later today. You can also minimize or reduce the size of the video so that you can see the slides better. Michael Crowley will open the webinar. Michael is the General Manager of Research, Development and Adoption at MLA. Michael will give an overview of the MLA genetics program, including sheep genetics. Following from Michael, Peter Bradley, the Senior Development Officer at Sheep Genetics, will be leading the webinar. Peter will discuss why the new site was developed and the process behind this, the features of the new site, and where to next for the site. I'll hand over to Mick now to give an overview of the MLA genetics program.
Thanks, Gus. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today. Look, I thought it was just a really good opportunity before we get into the specifics around the website and how the website works, just to give a bit of an overview as to the approach that we're taking across our R&D portfolio. Peter, if you can just go to the next slide for me. I think it's important when we consider the context of our genetics R&D investments to make sure that we're positioning genetics in the whole farm production system, to make sure that we're striking the balance between the production traits, as well as then making those connections through to our customers and ultimately the consumer. We've seen big gains being made in terms of looking at improving eating quality traits that we haven't had in the past. And you start thinking about, well, what else is going to come at us in the future? How does the consumer start to drive the way in which the feedback and the processor brands start to shape the specifications for our production system, and making sure we're linking genetics to those consumer outcomes so that we can make the best gains for the whole supply chain and ultimately for the production sector. By positioning genetics within this whole farm system and in the value chain context, we're also looking to strike an appropriate balance between new R&D as well as balancing the adoption of the work that we've delivered over the years. Particularly when we get into genetics, it's really great to see how much engagement we have around the sheep genetics program. And I was just reflecting on how much uptake we've had in the program, particularly over the last 12 months. When you consider that we've seen a steady increase in the number of members and number of flocks memberships in sheep genetics, and even over the last 6 months alone, we've seen a 68% increase in the number of flocks that are registered with sheep genetics compared to the 6-month period prior. When we then start looking at how do we make the information that we're recording and making available to industry, how do we make that better? That's certainly the intention here with the website redevelopment, to get better access to data. The database upgrades have been flagged as the highest priority for the sheep genetics team through the advisory committee that we work very closely with. It is absolutely important to get feedback. It doesn't seem like anyone's hesitated to do that. But look, I think it is important that before any further issues are raised, that it's, and everyone's here today for the right reasons, to engage in understanding the process. The team will take you through the changes, how the website does address some issues of the past, delivering on some new features, and yes, things are going to look and feel a bit different. But if there is further development required, the team are keen to do that. But I think what's really important today is that everyone understands the new platform, and then the feedback can be well informed. And the changes are designed to not only make things easier today, but look at where else, how else do we make information readily available moving forward. So that's a brief intro from me today. I'll look forward to seeing what questions come through the webinar, and no doubt there'll be questions following this engagement. And the team are really happy to take that feedback on, And I'll hand over to Peter Bradley now, who will take you through the approach, the process, and point out some of the new features. Thanks, Peter. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Mick. For those that are just joining that might have missed Gus's introduction at the start, if you could please keep your microphone muted, your video off, to ensure that we have the best quality webinar for everyone involved. And if you have any questions, we'll be having a question session at the end of the formal presentation side of things. And we ask that you submit any questions via the chat box on the bottom toolbar. And if you could send those directly through to our chair and sheep genetics manager, Gus Rose, that would be greatly appreciated. And we'll try and get to as many of those at the end of the webinar as we can. And if not, we will be following up individually. We've also had a number of people send questions through ahead of time, so we appreciate you taking the time to that. We'll try and get through as many of those as well. If not, we will be following up individually. My key part of the presentation today is to run through three key topics. So around redeveloping the search site, the process that we took around this, why it needed to be redeveloped. Also looking at the key features. So what does the new site offer? And then looking at what's next, what's on the horizon, some things that we've noted that have come up since release. So we'll be talking through those. But I'll first kick off with the redeveloping the sheep genetics site, just by revisiting what our role is of sheep genetics. And I think Mick touched on this quite nicely earlier, that whilst sheep genetics, we have nearly 1,000 seed stock breeders that are direct members of us. We also, our audience is much larger in that we actually deliver the national genetic evaluation to not just sheep breeders, but also sheep buyers. So the website and the need to redevelop the website was around offering a platform to deliver ASBVs and indexes to broader industry and not just our seed stock buyers, but it's seed stock breeders, sorry. But it was also important that we continued to cater for their needs. So there's really three key reasons around why we redeveloped the old site. It really was, the old site was using out-of-date software, meaning that it was quite difficult to service. So our internal staff within MLA didn't actually, very difficult to get training for the platform the old site was housed on, as well as sourcing external software companies to develop the old site. It was written in an old language that could no longer be serviced. We also were having reliability and breakdown issues with the old site. Particularly, we had a week last year in 2019 that really highlighted the need that we needed to upgrade the search site. We've been getting feedback from our members for a number of years now that we needed to do something with the site. So this presented an opportunity not just to redo the site, but actually explore how we were delivering breeding values via this mechanism. So looking at the expanding audience that were using breeding values through successful campaigns like the MLA genetics campaign that kicked off last year, we wanted to explore how this site was delivering information or ASBVs and indexes to those clients. So then we wanted to then turn those two things in, that upgrading the website to making it more functional and delivering information to new people meant that we needed to look at how we were going to cater for our expanding audience here. It also fits in as a key part of the genetics adoption strategy. So as part of this strategy, there's 4 key pillars. So demonstrating and growing the demand for breeding values, creating pathways for breeders and buyers to learn about breeding values, simplifying the language and tools. And this is really where the new website fits in, simplifying how we're talking about breeding values and gaining better access to the tools to help make better selection decisions to ultimately improve the rate of genetic gain. And finally, the 4th key pillar there is aligning all research and development with a clear pathway to adoption. So we decided we needed to redevelop the website, and there was a really structured process that we went through to end up where we are today with an exciting new website. The first was the concept, which has been, as I mentioned before, something that's been supported by our sheep genetics advisory committee that Mick touched on previously for a long period of time, because it was something that was a risk to the business, in that if we didn't upgrade it, we might have lost that service. It was also a project that was supported by our MLA board. Once we got the project up and running, it started with one of two phases, and the first phase was the discovery phase, which ran for the latter half of 2019. This discovery phase was involved more than 60 people. So this is what we call a user experience, and usually user experience phases that were conducted by other external companies engaged about 20 people. So we expanded that to engage 3 times the amount of people that are normally involved in that process. And that was done through a number of phone interviews, workshops, and even on-farm, what they call contextual inquiry. So where they shadow a farmer to see how they're using breeding values, and as well as other tools, so their own on-farm software, the website, etc. And we also looked at research into other data platforms. So this wasn't just looking at, yes, our other competitors in the sheep space internationally and how they're delivering the genetic evaluation, looking at how genetic evaluations delivered to industry in other species, so cattle, for example, but also how other industries that deliver a lot of data, how they were going about developing their sites to communicate that data. So we took that, this was contracted to another company that took the information from all these different interviews, calls, and research to develop a list of all possible features and designs of what the site could look like. We then worked out, well, we needed to start somewhere, so we developed what was going to be included in our initial release product, which we released earlier in August. So at the conclusion of the discovery phase that involved heavy consultation, we went into the build phase, which commenced in January this year. Now, the build phase had extensive testing throughout, so it wasn't just a team of developers going off and doing their own thing. And there was intensive testing both within the development team, but also within the sheep genetics and genetics team to the features that were being developed to make sure that they met our requirements. We also shared testing links to users. More than 100 testing links were sent out, and we received feedback on that we were able to then fine-tune the website before release. I just thought I'd mention, if you are after more detail on that first discovery phase of the project, we have an MLA final report that's available online. You can find it using the project code shown below. So just in a quick summary of the first topic today, the website, really, we have recognised it as a really important tool to delivering breeding values to industry, not just to seed stock breeders, but also to commercial clients. There really was a great need to improve the reliability and serviceability of the old website. And we tried to do this by engaging and consulting with a wide range of stakeholders and users of the site. So now we've got a new website, which we're really excited to have been able to launch earlier this month. I just thought I would now cover through some of the features and how to use these and get the most and the best experience out of the website possible. Just before I begin on that though, the website was developed for use on mobile, tablet and browser, so PC browser applications. This was because we did recognise even the old site, which wasn't optimised for these, were being used extensively by our users, not just on their PC, but across a range of devices. We did make the decision early on so that we could get as many features included in the website as possible, that we would only be offering it for supported browsers for Google Chrome, Firefox and Safari for Apple users on their mobile in particular. So just to make sure you get the most out of the website, please download the latest version of one of these browsers and you'll be set up ready to go. If you have been using it in Internet Explorer previously and facing some issues, it hasn't been optimized for that, so I really recommend jumping on board and downloading one of these browsers. So when you first access the website, you get to this page. So we call this our dashboard. So this is the home point and entry page into the search. So any user, when they come to this page, has these 3 key questions to answer. So the first one is around whether you're a ram breeder, ram buyer, or service provider. And at the moment, this actually doesn't hinder any functionality at all. It's just capturing the type of user that you are. And we hope in the future, as we continue to grow and develop the site, because that's what's the really exciting thing about this site, is it's not going to sit still like the old one did for 12 years. We've got the ability to continue to add new features, that we will be able to offer specific features for each of the different types of users. The second question is around what you want to search. So this is just pointing to the database, which is much easier to do here versus the old site where you had to click into lots of different tabs and sometimes reverted back to the old one. This is a really easy way to just filter down to the analysis that you're looking to search within. For some analyses like the merinos and terminals, you get asked a third question. Now this third question doesn't filter any animals out. It just sets the default traits as an entry point for any new user to the site. So if you clicked on maintaining eating quality, improving carcass and growth, it's not actually going to be filtering out any animals at all. It's just going to be setting up your default traits for when you search, which you can, we'll go into a bit later, you can change once you're in there. One of the really good features about the new website that was very clear from our consultation process was that people weren't sometimes sure of the spelling of stud names or even traits. So we now have predictive search used throughout the website. So this is one example of where it's used when searching for a stud name. So in this case, you can type in after 3 letters, it begins to predict, and you can keep typing and it will get you down to the flock that you're interested in. It's also, this predictive search function is also available at another number of other places, including when you're creating pen cards, for example, and you want to find a trait to put in, you can type in weaning, for example, and it will bring up all the weaning traits you could potentially add there. Likewise with custom columns, and likewise when you're wanting to search on ASBVs. I'll also draw attention here to the info icons next to a lot of the filters. So this is to help particularly new users to the site that aren't used to some of the terminology we might be using, to indicate what that filter actually does in a search. We also are now offering, whilst on the old site we were able to add minimum and maximum values to find animals within a range of breeding values, the new ASBV filters provide percentiles that appear next to each of the traits that you select, that help users actually really narrow down and target a range of animals and breeding values that they might be looking for there. And then once you've completed a search, you get to the new search display. So I'll just take a moment now to talk through a couple of the key features here to help you get the best experience out of the site. Wherever you are on the site, the Sheep Genetics logo will remain up in the top left corner. Now, to get back to the dashboard page that we first saw, where you selected those 3 questions, you just click the Sheep Genetics logo. You can be anywhere in the site and it will take you back to that page. So that's a really quick, easy navigation tip there. We also have the edit search functionality. So in this case, we've gone in and done a search with these 3 criteria. If you want to edit that, you can quickly look at the search criteria you've got in, click edit, and that will appear up over the screen, and you can refine the results to what you need. So for example, if I'd done this search and I can see it's returned over 2,000 animals, I might want to narrow that down to say animals with an index over a certain value or have been used in more than one flock, for example. Then we've got the new percentile highlights. So any of the users of the old site might remember the blue boxes. So we've taken those and expanded them. So we're not just highlighting the top 10% anymore. We're also got highlights for top 5 being purple, top 10 being blue, and also a top 20% being green. So users are able to select which percentiles up to the top 20% they'd like highlighted in these percentile highlights box. We're also now flagging just in plain text under each breeding value if an animal lies in the bottom 10 or 20th percentile, depending what the user would like to see for that particular trait. So just highlighting that, providing, I guess, another visual cue for users to be able to use when sorting through and filtering animals. Now I mentioned the Customise ASBV function, and we will be able, we'll come back and look at this one in a little bit more detail, but that's just highlighting where you find if you'd like to change these traits that you're seeing here. We also have a new sticky header. So any user of the old site might remember when you scroll down the page, you used to lose what column belonged to what trait. So now on the new site, this header is sticky, so it will always stay as you're scrolling through the animals. We've also updated the filter and a filter order. So you can see here, this down arrow means that we're filtering on the LEQ index highest to lowest. And again, an amendment from the old site is that this actually filters in the correct order for each of the traits. So highest to lowest, or for a trait like fiber diameter, where a lower value is generally more favorable, it will filter lowest to highest. Also providing, again, these info icons for people that might not be as familiar with the acronyms or breeding values as many of our old hand users, that they can easily click on this and find out more information about that index or trait that they're looking at. Now the data display, we'll have another look, but we've also got different ways now of displaying information. And we'll jump to now the graph view, which we've been able to update by using this drop down. So the other one we're on was called data view. This is graph view. And this is a new way. Again, not everyone learns visually, but a big part of our consultation and the first experience definition phase of the project was that some people do enjoy visual learning, and particularly those that might not understand what each individual number means and where that animal sits relative to industry. So we now have this graph view that provides a bit more context to where that animal sits for each particular trait for industry. So in this example, it's not quite as good for post-weaning weight, but you can see he's really towards the top for many of these other traits. I will point out now, and we've had some good feedback, so thank you to those people that provided it, around these, what we call optimal traits. So birth weight, fat, and say adult weight's another example where bigger or lower is not always better. We want an optimum, that these are sitting up here. So this is something that we are working on, and it's not a website issue. It's just something that's our database. We just had to build in an extra feature to make sure that this was being displayed. So thanks to those guys that have provided feedback on that. That should be fixed relatively soon. Coming back to the Customise ASBVS. So this is where we've set the default based on that third question we saw, which might not be the traits in everyone's objective. So we're able to set up to 12 traits here. Again, predictive text here to easily be able to search and find ASBVs. One of the functionalities that we weren't able to include because we wanted to get other features built was the ability to drag and drop and reorder these. So for example, I might want to see P fat ahead of P weight. Unfortunately, we didn't get that included, but it's something we are looking at down the track. But if you're a logged in user, and I'll get to logged in user functionalities shortly, that the order that you save your traits in for that analysis actually saves. So when you reorder these traits, you can come back in a later session next week, a month's time, and the traits will be saved in the order that you've set that as your preference for. So the way to do that would be to just delete everything that's there and start to add traits in the order that you'd like. So we appreciate it's not the most optimal function straight away, but once it's done, it's set there. So it just takes you a couple of minutes to get that set, and then you'll have a smooth experience throughout the rest of the site. So I spoke just briefly then about logged in functionality, but there's lots of other benefits of being a logged in user to the site. And this new site offers a great deal more functionality than what the old site did when it comes to the logged in experience. So some of the key benefits really are around being able to save searches and export searches out of the site. But one of the key features is around non-sheep genetics members being able to create an account with sheep genetics for the first time. So this is free, just an email address, password, and a couple of simple questions to get them up and going. And that allows them to save searches and export results. And we're hoping to add additional function in here in the future for these non-sheep genetics members that are users of our site. For SG members and service providers that have previously had accounts for us or will have accounts with us, you're able to actually view all the flocks that you have associated with your login on that dashboard page. So anyone that might have been familiar with the old site, you used to have to log in with each individual flock code and a password for each flock code, which is okay if you've got one flock, but if we've got many users that have multiple flocks, even a pole and a horn flock. So you're now able to access and see information for those flocks just with the one email address rather than two different logins. These logins also significantly improve our security for our users of the site. And we also offer great potentials for integration with MyMLA and single sign-on in the future. So that's a really good start to getting integrated with other MLA platforms. So I'll just now quickly step through a couple of the logged in functionalities and how to access them. So once you are a logged in user, you'll see your username up in the top right-hand corner. And you can see here we have our save search functionality. So if I've done a search, which in this case has this criteria, and I want to save that because I want to monitor those animals time after time, every time I jump onto the site, I can click save search. That will prompt you with a box that will allow you to give a descriptive name of that search, and that will appear on your dashboard every time you log in. So you're able to just quickly access that link. You won't have to remember the criteria that you've added here. Likewise with the export function, if you're wanting to export that search, that will send it to an Excel document. So if you like to look and manipulate data, for example, or enjoy filtering in Excel, you're able to do that. Why you have to be logged in is that actually when you click export, it exports these results, so all 2,315 animals, to your email address associated with your login. So the great thing about that is that you're actually able to click export, and while that Excel file is building and being emailed to you, you're able to continue browsing in the site and doing other searches. So it doesn't hold up the process there at all. Coming back to the dashboard, if you are, in this case, a logged in user and a sheep genetics client, you'll also see additional tiles like this tool tile. So you will remember on the old website, we had a tools page, which is where our mate cell users were able to access that system. You're also able to access your download files to go into your various softwares, as well as genetic trends. So you still have to go to this tools page. Here it wasn't included in this development, but we do have an easy find link here on the dashboard page where you will be referred to go back to your old login. But again, it's a great opportunity as we keep developing and adding to this site in the future. We also have enhanced the functionality of our sale and semen catalogues, making the process easier for people to upload sales. And that's also been enabled by the improved login. So rather than having to create a multi-vendor sale when you had a pole and a horn flock being auctioned at the same time, you're able to create it all now in the one spot. We also have improved the descriptions, the ability to provide a better description on the animals in the sale or the semen catalogue that you're uploading, as well as being able to upload and customize it a little bit with your own logo and make it about your flock. Once you've created catalogues, we've got an easy to find page here where you can find all the catalogues that you've created, semen or sale, in the one spot, where you're also able to now edit existing catalogues that you've created or even published, delete catalogues that are no longer relevant, and print pen cards on those animals. The pen card functionality has also been enhanced. So we've now got these percentile shadings that are aligned with our web display. We can also, if I'd uploaded a logo in this example, that displays on the pen card, whereas previously that wasn't a functionality that the old site enabled. We also have the addition of this QR code. So the QR code means that when that pen card's being displayed at a sale or a field day, anyone can come up scan that with them with their phone, and that animal's individual listing on our website will display. So it's a really good opportunity. You can see here we've got sire and dam pedigree, but if you were a seed stock breeder and you saw an animal and might want a bit more detail about the pedigree, you can scan it with your phone and it will bring it up to see the depth of pedigree that you'd like to see there. The QR code is large enough. We did have to factor in here a little bit. And again, this is where the contextual inquiry and following farmers around and learning how they use the website and pen cards has to be large enough that you can actually scan it from the other side of the pen, given that it's usually displayed up behind the animal. So we've really, in summary of the new features, and we've got some how-to guides if you're still looking to get started, and I'll touch on some other learning opportunities if you'd like to learn more about the website. But really, there's a lot of new additions that make the site easier to finding and viewing animals. And we've also got additional functionality that we previously never had for logged in users, as well as additional functionality as well around creating sale and semen catalogues, and also pen cards for use. So we've covered today why we redeveloped the site, the features of it, but like I said at the beginning, we don't want this site to sit still for the next 12 years. It's going to continue to evolve, and we'd like to involve as many of our producers in that journey as possible. So the pathway forward to continual improvement starts with some small things. There's going to be new things, and then there's going to be big new things that we develop. So the small things are amending some of the bugs, which anyone that might not be overly familiar with tech terms, it's just little glitches that are occurring. And our breeders have already helped us identify some of these, and these are already being worked on as we speak. We also have new things, so adding new features just to make the site a little bit easier. So a good example is being able to delete a saved search. So you might have got really excited, created 20 saved searches, but you only really need 3 or 4. So just adding in a delete button, which is something that's already coming within the next few weeks. And then of course there's big new things. So adding additional functionality, new ways to view data, new ways to compare animals. And that's the great thing about this site, is that these things are much easier to add on and build. So some of the things that we're already got underway, and again, thank you to everyone that's already provided feedback and bringing some of the issues above to our attention. We are working quickly to resolve these. So there's been some small things with Customise ASBVS, uploading results. You can read through them there, but I guess it's important to note that no matter the type of software release, we see it with big companies like Apple on your iPhone when you do an update, they always come back shortly after with another one to fix out and iron out any of the issues that have come up since first release. So whilst we did put a lot of emphasis on extensive testing, and there's always going to be small things that come up. So we appreciate your help identifying it and patience while we amend these, but we're always going to be continuing to update and hopefully overcome these things. Along with some direct feedback on those particular features we saw before, we've had feedback on the website as a whole, and we've got a few key themes already arising. So whilst the display is more simplified and much more user-friendly to a new user of the site, some of our users that have been using the site and looking at breeding values for a long time and have a really good handle on the numbers want to see more traits and indexes, as well as being able to export that information. So that's a key theme that's come up already. We're already looking and investigating ways that we can accommodate this within the website. So it won't come tomorrow, but it is something we're aware of and already looking at ways we can implement that and get that feature up and running for our users. Also looking at targeting additional features. So I mentioned before, the ability to select 5 or 6 animals and compare them in a particular way. And some of the other information that came out of the on-farm discovery phase of the website, there's some really good things that we didn't get developed that we're going to continue to be looking at and prioritizing those regularly to see which ones get up. if you do have any feedback and haven't been in contact with us already, we do welcome any feedback that you have on the site. We will have an opportunity to provide some feedback in a survey that we sent out shortly after the webinar. We also ask if you do have any other additional feedback that might come up, that you email that to info@sheepgenetics.org.au. And if you're able to provide, rather than broad general feedback, really specific details or even screenshots, for example, that allows us to really be targeted with our improvements and how we prioritise these going forward. And in terms of some more information, so if you haven't had a chance to jump on the site yet, I recommend you do. We're also going to be running some site demonstration sessions. So our Sheep Genetics staff will be doing this, and it's really around just getting you up and going and searching with the website, as well as we are aware we're coming into sales season, that we might have some of our breeder users that are looking to create sales catalogues. We'll be having alternate sessions between getting started and creating sale catalogues. So we will be providing a registration link for these sessions, and an email will also follow. So please keep an eye out. We're looking at running multiple ones. They're just going to be short 30-minute sessions, and lots of opportunities to register for different time slots that work for you. We've also developed a frequently asked questions guide and how-to guides that are available on our normal Sheep Genetics home site. So just in summary of the final session about where we're heading to next, we will be continuing to develop the website. We're really excited we have the platform that we're now able to work with, both with internal MLA staff are able to develop, but also external companies. It's a much easier platform to get them to help us with development on. We thank everyone for providing the level of detail and feedback to date. And we are looking at future improvements already, and we've even seen a few implemented behind the scenes. And if you do have any feedback, we ask that if you could send that through to info@sheepgenetics and be really specific with that, that would be greatly appreciated. So that's it for me, Gus. I'll hand over to you for some questions.
Great, thanks, Peter, for that. Thanks to everyone who sent in some questions. You did touch on the 12 traits, Peter. Was there a reason that 12 traits was selected?
Yeah, good question, Gus. So there was a couple of things we had to optimise. One was a key finding from the contextual inquiries that we had to improve the speed of the site. So having less traits rather than loading all up, 76 traits was something that we did have to balance. We also looked at the number of traits that are used in our indexes. So no more than 10 traits were used in any of our indexes. So that gave people the opportunity to have all the traits in the indexes and a couple of the indexes. Like I said, we've had feedback around this already, and it is something that we are already looking at ways we can accommodate those people that are looking for more information or may want more traits appear.
Thanks, Peter. We had another question about deleting saved searches. You had that on a slide, so that's something which we're looking into at the moment. Yeah, that's already something. The code's already being developed for that. We're just doing a final lot of testing, so we're expecting that to be available shortly, probably within the first week or two of September at this stage. So yeah, a simple fix that we're able to implement straight away. Yeah. There's another question about indexes on pen cards, that they're compulsory to put on pen cards.
Yeah, so indexes, we've seen in many places, not just in sheep, are a great way to make genetic progress, particularly when you're trying to balance a wide range of traits. So we see that in cattle, in species like fish, even. So we made the decision to make indexes there, and there's a really good article in last week's Friday feedback from Rob Banks at AgBoo about his top 5 tips for selecting rams or bulls this season. And filtering on indexes was one of the key parts of that. So allowing commercial clients to use index as a tool to filter through animals and then look at individual traits. again, it is feedback we're still taking on board at this stage. So if you do have a feeling on that, please let us know. And we'll look at assessing that and making amends if we need to.
We had a question from Elise, which was a bit specific. So Elise, maybe we'll get to you after the webinar. Another quick question is, you mentioned that some new changes might be implemented later. Do you have some sort of timeline about when those might be implemented?
Yeah. So like I said, it's a bit of a continual scale. So some of those smaller things that I put on the slide, we might be looking at a solution for within a month or two. Something bigger like that, I don't know, a total new functionality. I can't really put a timeline on that. It depends on development. I guess the key message really is that it's continuing to be updated all the time. We'll obviously communicate any major changes with our clients and the website audience. But yeah, really focusing on those small functional issues, which I can't really give an exact timeline on them because they are being worked on as we speak. But as soon as there's a solution to those, we'll be implementing. So continual timeline. If you do have any specific questions, please follow up about where a particular feature might be at. Please follow up with us.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I've got another question from Fazul, which I'll reply to you after the webinar, Fazul, because it's quite a specific question. Another question about catalogues and being able to put your own breeding values on there instead of having the pre-selected indexes and traits.
Yeah. So this is something that we are working on at the moment, not for a user to update which traits are available, but rather we would like any user that comes to the site to see the traits that they're interested in. So if they've done a default search and they might be interested in a range of traits, we would like to see, and they've set them as their default, we want them to carry over to the catalogue so the individual users can see the traits that are important. So anyone that's using the catalogue function at the moment, even if you go in and you've never done a search, you can't actually customize your ASBVs in there. So that's something we're working on implementing at the moment, but we really want it to be a user focused thing. So the user sets the traits that they want to see rather than the seller of the animals.
Right. And one last question. It is about the timing of the release of the website.
Yeah, so we do recognise that there's never an ideal time among our such a diverse range of clientele that we do have to implement any change, given the diverse range in selling seasons, in selection seasons, so when they're choosing sires and dams. But we were really excited about the tool and we wanted to be able to deliver it as soon as we could in advance of the ram selling season from kind of late August through to October. And we wanted that because we wanted as many users, particularly those that might not be used to using the old site or are accessing breeding values for the first time, which we've seen because of such great results through the genetics adoption campaign. We wanted them to be able to access a much user-friendly platform. The other key reason was that the new site is much more reliable. So during the ram selling or the ram selling season we are entering into, we wanted a site that we knew was going to hold up during that intense load period. So yeah, not an ideal time for everyone, but we're excited to get it out there as soon as we could and hopefully provide a much better experience during this ram buying season compared to previous ones.
Great, thanks, Peter. I've got one quick question about the webinar that has been recorded and it will be available later. And one final question, because this is a nice question, it's about our actual Sheep Genetics website, whether it will be updated to match the new search site.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've, well, it looks like we've had one site for a long time. We actually have two different sites, one being the search site and one being what we call the content site. So where you go to find more information about breeding values, about sheep genetics, how to get started, etc. So we've redeveloped the search site already, which is what we're seeing. We've just got a project up to develop that content, what we call the content site, where you go to find more information about that. So around breeding values, etc. So that will be being done over the next couple of months. So we look forward to delivering something soon there that will be much easier to access those resources that we have available.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Just for Fazal, who sent me a message, would you mind emailing me so I get your email address so I can follow up with you after the webinar for your request? So thank you for joining. We'll send out a feedback survey about the webinar, and in that feedback survey, you can also give us feedback about the search site, which we can use to add to the feedback we're getting from everyone else. Otherwise, send an email to info@shipgenetics.org.au and sign up for the sessions which are coming later in the week. There'll be an email sent out about that. So thank you very much for your